There's a thing called the internet disconnect. My overall aim is to visualize, manifest, conceptualize, and be able to describe what this is to anyone who asks me. It's not the internet itself. It's not the data, the content, or the way we use the internet, nor is it how the internet works, or a commentary on the structure of the internet. From a personal standpoint, I had feelings of anxiety in relation to the internet, but also an immense feeling of awe towards it. I've been trying to articulate and describe these feelings. The best help can be found in Heidegger's theory of anxiety, which states that which induces anxiety has no distinct characteristics of harmfulness, implying that it is what lies within, around, and between it, anxiety-inducing. And so, the internet disconnect is the stuff that lies within, around, and between the internet. I've developed methods, tools, and systems to explore that space. This is a project about the internet, the interface where the internet meets interaction, where portal meets practice, the virtual and the physical. It is an exploration of the space between thing and non-thing, space and spacelessness, place and non-place.
But it doesn't stop at these areas, right? That's right. In front of my eyes, virtual space is made of virtual materials. The internet is a place where these relations of the real are subsumed into things, in the process of simulation, in which the digital world becomes the real, and in which the body becomes material for cyberspace. That's how the embodiment of the internet is manifested.
Graham Harman says that our devices are mediators, things that allow communication between two grounds that would otherwise be unable to communicate. I've applied this theory to the internet. I've subverted the logic by making myself the mediator between two internet grounds. The first is Botnik, a predictive text bot. The second is Transformer, a neural network natural language bot that you just heard. We've been having discussions and doing design together in the Virtual Design Studio, or VDS for short. Sometimes the internet bots say useful design stuff, sometimes they're funny, other times they're not helpful at all. I've been frustrated by the need to be constantly available to work, as Mark Fisher talks about us all being tethered to the network via devices. He describes this tethering to be the fault of capital being administered to every part of our lives via the smartphones that connect us to cyberspace. He describes this notion to inflict a form of super-exploitation upon us, under which we are never free from work or anxiety. And the most frustrating part is that we are not actually working the whole time, just that we must be available to work at all times. And I largely hold the internet to blame for this. As part of my initial explorations, I drew a timeline and found I could map my life against technology for the most part. But I also found this photo of my mum with a phone strapped to her waist. I remember my parents never being able to switch off when I was little, and this image symbolises that. I think it's from 2001. I now associate this blame with the internet. I began to synthesize some text manually from various sources. I used Mark Fisher's ideas of temporal malaise, Lucky's monologue from Waiting for Godot, If You Lived Here You'd Be Home by Now by Stanley Donwood, and Bruce Sterling's Shaping Things, along with some internet syntax, which just consists of words and phrases you encounter when you use the internet. And I picked the pieces that would be relevant to the internet, or could be relevant to the internet. And then what I did was, and you can see it on the Virtual Design Studio website, if you go on the text section and then scroll down, these are all of the automatic generated bits, which we're going to get to later. But if you find this living internet text, I'll read it to you. Living internet, endless possibilities, laptops make ends meet, 404 not available, warning, CCTV in operation, echoing, hardware, portal. The text goes on for another few minutes. I then put all of the terms and phrases from it into this database in order to try and understand why I felt like it was building a vibrant picture of the anxiety or mood or feeling I was trying to encapsulate when writing about the internet. There's a stark contrast between instructions and the first-person Malay statements, but this just exemplifies the absurdist nature of the internet, where everything is exactly where you need it all of the time, but because the internet is flat and there is virtually no hierarchical structure and everything just exists on web pages, there's no way of prioritizing anything or sifting through the vast amounts of information. I think it is this which is anxiety-inducing, but it is also what prompted me to look between the internet. I've been trying to make diagrams of the processes I've carried out in my work. A lot of it is trying to base it on feedback loops or logics, a fusion of the analog and digital. So here's a loop for manual text synthesis. Inside the VDS, Botnik does similar things. The only difference is I can carry out this process in the web browser, something that became an essential thing for the VDS. If I was going to do design with the internet, it made sense to do it online. Initially, I put my context report into Botnik. He produces a keyboard of words to choose from, and I help make text statements. Dimension. Between bodies and This then became prompts for Transformer, so I'd take Botnik's output, paste it into Transformer, occasionally add my own input, and soon enough I was mediating in, participating in, and facilitating discussion with the bots. These discussions are documented in logs. There's 18 of them now, and we are nearly at 26,000 words across 120 pages. Within the logs, entities pop up. An entity, in my opinion, was something that I saw potential in during the discussion, i.e., we could make it, do it, or act it, and it would push us closer to the goal of manifesting the internet disconnect. An example of an entity brought about by the logs would be the data dictionary, mentioned in log 2, 25th of March 2020. Here is one of the very first recordings of a log I made with the bots, where we talked about the data dictionary.
TF, the data dictionary is a free web-based dictionary of programming terminology.
The data dictionary, in the context of the project, was super helpful because by reframing language, recontextualizing it, or allowing new meanings to manifest through the logs, I've managed to describe elements of the disconnect. For example, the metaverse in reality is a virtual reality space in which users can interact with a computer-generated environment and other users. But in the context of the VDS, the bots and I have called it a third space and used it to describe the territory midway between the real and the virtual. It is the ungrounded space that the internet disconnect creates. In the eFlux journal, the internet does not exist. They talk about language, mentioning that everyday discourse aims at taking care of things at hand and talking about them. My argument is that there is not yet a language and therefore an understanding of how we might begin to take care of the things that are not at hand, and we are all just tethered to the internet via our smartphones and laptops, and therefore this new terminology has allowed me to develop a discourse for the internet disconnect. That brings us on to image. In order to define these things, I had to also follow the tasks outlined in the logs and create hyphens to manifest them. A hyphen, by data dictionary definition, is a nickname for a noun, an object, a blip on the radar in the metaverse. It's a manifestation of the in-between, an output of a place. So, we called on a bot to make images. We had plenty of text, and luckily we found a text-to-image generator. You type directly into it and it chucks out a new image every few seconds. Now, the beauty of these images is that they cross over with Marc Augé's theory of non-place. A non-place refers to an anthropological space of transience that does not hold enough significance to be regarded as a place. We can apply this to bus stops, shopping centres, and in my opinion, internet browser windows. The image not found image is arguably the best example of non-place image I have found. So when the generator produces images from text, I look for non-place images because the generator is building images from neural network textures. This can be hit and miss. This is again a digital alternative to the previous analog method of collage I was using. These collages created earlier in the project use displaced bodies and holographic textures to visualize, as Rob Shield explains, the crisis of boundaries between our bodies and technologies created by the internet, the endless possibility being something taken from my manually synthesized text piece. This is the loop diagram for image generation. I had to provide system and structure in what was otherwise an ungrounded space. A failed but valid stepping stone in the journey to manifesting the internet disconnect was when I tried to embody it in objects using physical computing. This is an image never found object, an LED screen programmed to scroll endlessly. This is a sticker printer that was designed to print out a sticker of a clicker every time you click. This is a fan modelled on the feeling of an internet data centre. It speeds up or slows down based on how much data comes into the computer it is connected to. The fan was the most successful of the internet objects because it embodied the internet in a live way and was also converting the virtual back into the physical. It translated the internet in a tangible way. These objects were also too wrapped up with the aesthetic of the internet. I'd been using hardware and icons to inspire design decisions, but it wasn't working too well as the designs became dependent on the icons and was stunted by this. Whenever I get stuck or feel like something isn't going too well, I make a map, and so I made a map with all the theory and themes I've been exploring and plotted the internet objects onto it. What it revealed to me was that there was a space in the virtual, intangible, conceptual territory that seemed to have more potential than the territory the internet objects existed in, and this is where the VDS exists. These maps have become a staple in decision-making or understanding what I'm doing and where it sits. In relation to other projects, it sits between other design work in the space this map dictates. It's not quite the web art page that www.jodie.com is. It's not quite leaked as life-size scroll bar art piece. Nor is it Studio Heights' book in the global village that takes the viewer to a web page based on which parts of the book they tap on. It's close to Olivia Jack's Hydra, a live code in-browser video synthesizer, and this satellite arts project that created a third space through video synthesis and satellite communications before the internet, in 1977 to be exact. I've put the data fan on this diagram too, to show where the internet objects sat. The virtual design studio kind of sprawls across all of these spaces. The VDS logs create entities in the territory the map just described, and then I've used the tools, systems, and loops to manifest them. When you combine the image, conversation, and text generation loops, you get a
project management loop of predicates between tools memories there, and then put things compiled onto the studio feedback loops consist of scripted validation BN,
as Botnick calls it. So this image generation is a hyphen, a manifestation in the metaverse. This image took text from the logs into the generator and turned it into an image. Log 10, page 78. I've started collaging the generated images on Illustrator. Some of them have worked as 3D renders too, but the problem is stitching them together to make clear and defined virtual environments for Project Hyphen. What do you think?
Has anybody tried it before? Why not? I'd say if you try and stitch them up, that they will probably just end up looking sort of mishmashy.
I'm wondering if instead of making environments straight up, we can create a series of elements that can be reconfigured to make a virtual environment for Project Hyphen. And another entity mentioned was the digital warehouse, something mentioned in log 1, and then we found an image and changed it into a 3D render in log 9 and sent off to print in log 13. And what's the digital warehouse? You're looking at it.
Is that the territory in the metaverse territory?
But there are virtual places in the metaverse. Of course there are.
So, cyberspace is in the metaverse, and therefore it's a good place for us to give this presentation?
It could be.
There is a contact with the metaverse. We could be in the metaverse, but this is like speculative fiction, but it is a familiar world, and we can try to make something like it, to make something that is as real as this is, and we don't have a problem with that.
This is the digital warehouse, a hyphen within the metaverse. We can plot this object on another graph to show where it exists in relation to the internet disconnect. I've got two examples. The first is a face-to-face encounter with a person. The next step is their photograph. Then you have the hyphened disconnected version generated by the image generator from a description of their face. Then you would have clip art of a face, and then an icon of a face. Each iteration reduces in resolution until you have the flattened internet icon version. The same is true with the building, so in reality you would see a house in front of you, then you have a digital photograph, then the digital warehouse, which is the hyphened disconnected version, then a clip art house, and then the flattened internet icon of a house. So the VDS final outcome at this point is a third space, official metaverse version of the digital warehouse. I have a 3D print of the digital warehouse, which I live streamed to the browser using Hydra, Olivia Jack's coding program, and then used init-screen and init-cam functions to overlay the live webcam feed with an audio visualizer called Mader. This is just like the satellite art project by Kit Galloway, which used two camera feeds from different locations and overlaid them via a satellite to create a third space in which artists from different time zones could dance collaboratively in the third space. I've included a live element of sound, which is transmitted via the internet and called into Hydra, the live webcam feed, streamed from my kitchen and put into a web browser to visualize the metaverse. So, as Anthony Dunn says in Hertzian Tales, if artifacts are too strange, they are dismissed. However, this rendered artifact, in my opinion, is non-placed, but placed in everyday life in a way that leaves room for the viewer's imagination, with a slight strangeness that contributes to the complicated pleasure that makes the value fiction of the digital warehouse and metaverse successful. But this artifact took 24,000 words of logs to produce. 24,000 words. Here's an extract from the script that explains my frustrations with the system, but also proves to me that there was no other way for me to get to this point. 7th of the 4th, 2020, log 7.
Loop of predicates between Botnik and Transformer is scripted into content.
You two want to write the script?
I don't see anything wrong with it, but have you read it?
So, you two have already written a script?
No, a bunch of chat posts. Don't get me wrong, but I like that more.
Sounding the script of our business with computers.
Is it just me, or is this sounding more and more like Waiting for Godot? It's like you're suggesting to me that the script is written here, right in front of us, scripted in these chat messages, and we just have to flesh it out with video and sound in order for it to be a tutorial video.
You realize how bad a job that is. You are telling me it is not written here right in front of us, scripted in these chat messages?
So, the logs have served a central role in the VDS, where image generation, text synthesis, world and concept building, audio generation have existed around it. Each time I carry out a loop, it covers the same steps and territories, but it takes less time to do. For example, this map or floor plan, starting point for a cityscape, was made from the text in log 18. I will be having a discussion with the bots about how we might extrude or utilize this model to make it into the amazing world Transformer talks about. These amazing worlds resonate with imagery appropriations I did really early on in the project. This one reads, "Far away is close at hand in images of the internet," implying that perhaps the internet has helped me to manifest what I couldn't express without the VDS as one outcome, but has also allowed me to design a system that others can follow if they'd like to do it for themselves.